Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm talking about one of my most anticipated movies of this summer, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Remember to hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Just to preface a bit, I loved this movie, but I want to talk about some of the context with my relationship with the Planet of the Apes movies first. I only just recently watched the entire franchise right before this one released. Overall, I would say it's a very enjoyable series. Some of them are definitely better than others, but a solid franchise overall. My real investment is when this new reboot trilogy was releasing over the last 10 or so years. Back in 2011, when Rise came out, I didn't know anything about this series or its existence and thought it looked cool because there was a big fight in a city with some apes. I was in my, oh cool, big fight in a city phase and didn't really care much about the story of movies at this point in my life. So naturally, my young self was quite underwhelmed because it didn't have as much action or fighting as I wanted it to. Well, young me was stupid because when I rewatched this movie before Dawn came out, I loved it. I've loved it ever since. I immediately loved Dawn, and it remains one of my favorite movies of all time. When War came out, I was insanely excited, but honestly, I was let down when I first saw it because it wasn't as action-packed as I hoped for, or how it was marketed. It was very much marketed as this big action movie, and it really isn't that. I liked the movie, don't get me wrong, but once again, I was big dumb because when I got the Blu-ray and rewatched it, I adored it. War for the Planet of the Apes is such an intimate and brutal movie. It's unlike most PG-13 blockbusters that release. It's a truly beautiful film. We can thank it for Matt Reeves becoming the director of The Batman. Naturally, I was excited for this new movie because I loved the trilogy so much. It is one of my favorite trilogies ever. I pretty much rewatch it every year nowadays, and Caesar is absolutely one of my favorite characters ever. However, there was a layer of apprehension because a fourth installment is always a risk, and while I liked Wes Ball's Maze Runner trilogy, not everyone did, so that director choice had me a tad bit concerned, but I am super glad to say that doubting Wes Ball is now a mistake because I adored this movie. In terms of my ranking of the series, I would place Kingdom right about tied with Rise in the overall franchise. It's like number 3 or number 4. I thought it was fantastic. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is an incredible start to a new journey within the world that was established in the Caesar trilogy. This movie had a very tough task to continue the current continuity without disrespecting or disregarding Caesar, while also needing to tell its own new story, along with building and fleshing out where the world is at this point. And just from a world-building perspective, this movie is a wonder to behold. Every location feels unique and has its own culture to it, while also feeling like it distinctly carries on Caesar's legacy. And speaking of Caesar's legacy, that is one of my absolute favorite things about this movie. Kingdom tackles the subject matter of legacy on a whole bunch of fronts. On one side of the story, it is shown that some groups have grown up not knowing who Caesar was, or why he is so important in the history of this new era of apes. And then there's another part of the world where, essentially with the character of Raka, it shows an order of apes that essentially worship Caesar and try to carry out his teachings and spread them throughout the world. And finally, there's a side to Caesar's legacy that is corrupted. The villainous faction of the film has either completely misunderstood what Caesar meant, or corrupted his words into something that better suits them. It is a fascinating way to build out the world, while also reflecting on our own society like good sci-fi usually does, with how we may treat historical figures or deities and their legacies. And then there are also the humans in the film. I won't spoil what goes on with them, but I really enjoyed that aspect of the story as well. And for each of these sides of Caesar's legacy, there are essentially lead characters for each of these factions. There is Noah of the Eagle clan, who is the protagonist, who doesn't know anything about Caesar's legacy, and doesn't know anything about humanity. And then there is Raka, who is part of this group that idolized Caesar and wants to spread his teachings. And then there is Proximus Caesar, who is the main villain of the film and the king of the kingdom that is corrupting Caesar's teachings. Another thing that this movie does really well is almost immediately the film endears us to Noah. You get to understand his way of life, his people, his own personal struggles amongst the clan. He's a great new lead character, maybe not quite on the level of Caesar, but that's almost impossible to achieve in just one movie. And the other characters are great too. Raka is a definite standout, and he provides Noah with a new way of viewing the world and is also quite funny. And Proximus Caesar is also quite an interesting villain who has very clear and interesting motivations as well. On the human side, May is also a pretty well done character, but I feel like saying anything about her might count as a spoiler, and I don't want to spoil anything about the film. On the technical side of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, this is yet another mind-blowing achievement in visual effects from this franchise. Rise of the Planet of the Apes had really good special effects and still hold up mostly today. Dawn still looks perfect even 10 years later. War somehow had even better ape visual effects, and Kingdom rivals War in terms of the quality of visual effects and might even surpass it in many different aspects as well. My brain genuinely has a hard time comprehending the fact that these are not actually real apes. I know that they're all CG, but they look so lifelike and real that it's almost impossible to distinguish as being fictional. Dune Part 2 might actually have some genuinely real competition for the Visual Effects Academy Award. I know the Oscars tend to like to give the awards to some of the more grounded effects, like in 2014 Interstellar won over Dawn, which I can't complain about. But I feel like even though Dune Part 2 probably should get everything else at the awards, I feel like if anything, Kingdom should absolutely get the Visual Effects Award. Outside of the visual effects quality, I also loved the general aesthetic of this world. It really reminded me of some of my favorite video games, like the Last of Us games, and especially the Horizon games. The way that clans grew together and the way so many things were rusted and run down and overgrown really reminded me of the aesthetic of those games, which is one of my favorite aspects of those games as well. I'm seeing some people complain about the pace of this movie. I can't say that I agree with those sentiments. I certainly wouldn't say that this movie is fast-paced, but by the time the third act stuff was going down, I was thinking, oh dang, we're already in the third act? I would describe the pace as more meticulous than slow. I really loved the way that it took its time to build out its characters and the world, rather than just rushing straight into it. Maybe I didn't feel the pace because I was so utterly engulfed and immersed into the film, and maybe I'll notice the pacing on subsequent rewatches, but as of right now, that is not one of the issues that I have with this film. And even with a more meticulous pace, I thought the film was rather thrilling and exciting pretty consistently. And I suppose to avoid making this review a constant barrage of praise, I do have some minor criticisms. They don't feel like huge criticisms for myself personally, but I do need to address them. First of all, I loved Proximus as a villain. Kevin Durand did a phenomenal job playing him. His screen presence is incredibly strong, and he works as a great foil to Noah. I just wish that he was in the film a bit longer. Maybe 5 or so extra minutes, just so we could feel that extra weight of his presence just a bit stronger, and make it feel a tad bit more impactful. I would also say that I wished that the end to Proximus's story was a bit longer as well, and maybe slightly more climactic. I loved the callback and the storytelling that was behind it. I just wished it was a little bit more extended. I loved what was there, just wanted some more. And for a minor nitpick, I did think it was kind of funny how it looked like May got more makeup as the movie went along. She's been through so many dirty environments and old ruins, so it looks a bit funny when she has near perfect makeup in the third act of the movie. It's not something major, it's just more of a funny observation. So overall, I loved Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It lived up to what I hoped it would be, and I think doubting Wes Ball in the future is a bad idea because he did a terrific job directing this, and I can't wait to see what comes next in this series. Remember to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Feel free to comment what you thought about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and also what you thought of the previous Caesar trilogy. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.